One last thing before we go, Joshua, on a lighter note, everyone's been putting out their way too early top 25 rankings. We're going to have a lot of time this offseason to dive into, how we feel about different teams and what their rosters look like. But the interesting one that I want to get your perspective is ESPN's way too early top 25 has Ohio State at number 1. It goes Ohio State, Texas, Penn State, Notre Dame, Georgia as the top 5. Ohio State's losing a lot. Yeah. We don't know for sure who the quarterback is going to be next year. There could still be more staff turnover. Are you a little surprised that the expectations are that high for a potential repeat?
No, I mean, I feel like this is what we do every year is like, oh, whoever won it last year, we're just going to put them at 1 or 2 or whatever. When we do our way too early top 25. And certainly when the AP poll comes out and coaches poll, it's probably going to feel similar as we get closer to the season. I'm with you. I in good faith wouldn't put Ohio State at number 1 at this juncture because there's so many questions. As you mentioned, who's calling plays on defense? Is Chip Kelly going to be back to call plays on offense? Defensively, I think they're losing 8 of their starters. Guys are just going to be out of the program now. Something like that. It's a lot of turnover to replace there. Quarterback is a question. I think people believe in Julian saying we don't know. So yeah, I mean, I have questions about Ohio State compared to some of these other teams. I think the thing that people are banking on here is the recruiting and development, right? They're just going to be able to reload, which we've seen them do, no doubt. In the fact that we just watched them win a championship, it's really hard to ignore that Ohio State might be sitting right there next year.
Yeah. And I do wonder, I'm sure everyone will, kind of revise these as we get through spring ball and closer to the season. What the impact of not really being able to be active in the December portal window, how that could possibly impact the team. I think we all learned a lot about that with Michigan last year. So we'll have to see what happens there. The other interesting piece is Penn State at 3. I have seen people make a case for Penn State as the number 1 preseason team coming into next season for all the reasons we talked about at the top of the show with everyone that's coming back. 3 feels better to me, and it feels like a little bit less of a bullseye on your back because, like you said, Joshua, I feel like the idea of a national championship or bust, especially for a coach that hasn't won one and a program that hasn't played for one in a while, that's a lot to ask. But 3, a top 5 preseason ranking, that feels right. It feels right for Texas. It feels right for Notre Dame and for Georgia. Everyone expecting them to bounce back, certainly. But I think if you're Penn State fan, I think you're a little worried about all the nice things everyone's been saying about you. It's a lot of compliments, a lot of passes.
It's a weird spot. Yes, I'm totally there with you. I think Penn State fans are we haven't felt this. This is not a good place.
I think they're please stop saying all of these nice things. Yeah.
And I will say too, the other part, and it's hard to ignore, these kids are on social media and they see all the graphics out there of people doing this too. And it's hard to ignore it. And sometimes it does seep in. So they've got a bit of a job to do in terms of insulating their team from all the compliments. I think 3 is fair to your point. We can make the number 1 argument. We can make a number 2 argument here. But as we just mentioned, there is that question about what their offense is truly going to look like from a throw game perspective. I think they're going to be really good. Texas is the one that I wouldn't fight people if they said that's the number 1 team on these way too earlys, because I think we're all confident in Arch Manning. Steve Sarkisian has proven to us as well in back-to-back years that he's a legit ball coach. There was that, how much are we going to believe in Sark? I think we got to stop asking that question and just believe in the guy. They're going to be losing a little bit at wide receiver. Wingo, the freshman, phenomenal. I like them. They should be right there by the end of the year. But these way too early top 25s, I think we might need to stop engagement farming on content because these are kind of crazy.
They are, especially with when the portal is still going to be open, when there's still changes that are coming. I really feel like these things become even more outdated than they used to be because you used to be returning a lot of players. You kind of knew what these teams were going to look like. And now, you're kind of basing it on who you think is going to be quarterback. Are there high profile guys who are coming back? South Carolina is the preseason number 10 in this way too early. I buy that. I think that's an interesting pick. Sure. And I am intrigued because I want to watch Lenora Sellers. I think they had a great season. They were kind of right on the cusp of making the CFP. That's interesting. Clemson at number 7, really interesting as well, because you're bringing back Cade Klubnik, who's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the country, you've got to think. And
defense
so
should be
there's
fixed as well for Clemson, by the way.
great point.
Yeah. Like I think that's an interesting one too.
Yeah. So like there's cases to be made for all of these teams, and we'll do deeper dives in the rest of the offseason onto some of these top programs. But I think if I had to vote right now, I think I would go Texas 1.
I would say so. I think it makes the most sense here. Like, it's hard for me to argue the teams that are in the top 5.
Yeah, I think it's the right
order for
5.
me. Yes, I agree with that.
And then, I mean, there's still questions about Notre Dame.
Yeah, I know.
Quarterback. Like there's a lot. Like
they
people are
a ton of young guys though.
They did. No, and they were banged up, right? So you're assuming guys will come back, be healthier. Yeah. People were freaking out about the offensive linemen who were entering the portal. Like, again, guys became starters because of injuries. Yep. There's still a lot of guys coming back. Like, so there's so many questions still with some of these teams, even in the top 5, that we kind of need answers. And also the rest of the staff, you need to figure out some of the stuff for some of these top teams as well. So